Task-focused questions do exactly what they say on the tin. They ask you to talk about a time when a particular task or project happened and usually ask you to mention what you learned from it. The focus of these questions is not normally the task that actually happened, but the skills and qualities that you demonstrated in the process. For these questions, a framework beyond the previously mentioned point, example, explanation structure is useful. Using this technique will make you feel more comfortable that your answers have an appropriate flow, and it can help you get your answer across with a wider range of questions. The acronym that we use is STAR with 2 R's, standing for Situation, Task, Action, Result, and Relevance to Medicine. This can be a skeleton around which you can hang your content and save you a bit of brain power in thinking about how to arrange your response to have an appropriate structure and meaning to your answers. Some questions where it can be useful to use this framework are in the attached documents. The important part of this is to use the structure so much that on the day you're significantly more likely to have difficulty remembering the structure if you are trying to remember the facts and the details of it and your information recalling on the spot. You want to be practicing this structure so much that it's effortless to go through it in your mind. So going into these sections in a bit more detail, we'll go through what each one means. So situation describes the context in which you perform the task and face the challenge. You want to keep this concise, just including the essential information that you need. It can be tempting to narrate the entire series of events chronologically, and if you haven't practiced too much, that's an easy trap to fall into. You tend to just pull up from your memory whatever information you have at hand, and that tends to just be the information as it happens. You want to just include the relevant information for setting the scene and try and keep it nice and tight. So the next section is task. What were the objectives of the task and what were you doing? What was the goal of the project? Perhaps you had to complete a group project with a tight deadline, or you had to resolve a conflict with a co-worker or hit a sales target. You just want to be very clear about what the aims and goals of the task were, and you want to be specific about your responsibility if you had one. Remember that we're trying to keep the focus on you, so if you were given a specific role to perform so that the team could reach its objective, you want to give that most of your attention. Of course, we need to outline what the team's aim was and give some context, but once you've done that, keep those details to the team's details concise and give more information about what your contribution was. So next is action, and this is the most important section because it allows you to highlight the details of what your response was and clearly show your skills in a real life scenario. Therefore, this section needs to get a lot more information than the other sections. You need to talk through your specific mechanics of what you did to complete the task. You don't want to be vague with your information, so answers such as the team worked hard or we did some research aren't specific enough. You want to provide adequate amount of detail. You don't want to simply state what you did, but how and why you did it. Again, we're keeping the focus on your actions and not the team's. Let's say you were answering a question about a charity fundraising event and the target was to raise a certain amount of money. So you want to mention how you used your creativity in the initial stage and brainstormed the idea. You want to mention how your role was to use your clear communication skills to discuss with your team members and ensure that everyone understood their own responsibilities, and how you showed commitment and dedication in making sure that the team reached its goal. You want to be able to demonstrate that you know why you did what you did and how it was important and effective in helping the team reach its goal. You want to show the interviewer that you took the actions you did because you knew what the effect would be and it would get the outcome that you wanted. Next is results. So what happened at the end of the task? What were the objectives? Were the objectives met? You need to provide some closure to whatever the task was from the outset. If it wasn't met, why wasn't it met? How are they influenced by your actions? Highlight what your skills were and how they helped you to get to the result that you wanted. Don't forget to explain how your actions helped you to achieve the goal and why the skills you demonstrated were helpful. The next section is results. So what happened at the end of the task? The most important aspects of this section are, were the objectives met? You need to provide some closure on whatever the task was, and from the outset, did things go to plan? If they didn't, why didn't they? How are they influenced by your actions? You want to highlight what skills you demonstrated throughout the project. Don't forget to explain exactly how your actions helped the team to achieve the goal or you to achieve your personal goal, and how they were helpful in achieving that. Beyond the important parts, it may be helpful to emphasize what you learnt. Were there any mistakes that you made? Would you make them again? And what went well? Lastly, relevance to medicine. So how is this endeavor relevant to medicine, and what skills did you use that were relevant to working as a doctor and studying as a medical student? Whatever project you did, whether it was a charity bake sale or playing a sport at a high level, you will have likely utilized skills that are transferable to working in medicine. Later on, we'll be advising that you make the core qualities table, and that lists off all the important attributes that medical schools are looking for. To do this section well and to link in the task that you did and the skills that you showed well, a familiarity with the core qualities table is important, because you'll be familiar with that table and it will allow you to make comparisons between what you have done and the core qualities that medical students and doctors need to demonstrate. We'll finish off with looking at an example answer that could be improved, and we'll then try to improve it using the STAR framework. So the question is, tell me about a time that you dealt with a difficult situation and overcame it. So the example answer initially is, I was working in a restaurant in my part-time job as a waiter. I was approached by a customer who had received the wrong order and they were very upset. I had a 5-minute discussion with them. Following this, the customer was happy with the outcome and went home happy. Okay. So this, to an extent, uses the STAR structure, but it's nowhere near detailed enough. You want to answer a lot more questions. So what techniques did you use in the conversation? Why were those useful? How is this experience relevant to studying medicine? And while it's implied that the aim here is to resolve the customer's issue, it's not very clear from the outset that that's what you were trying to do. To improve the answer, I would suggest the below. I was working in a restaurant in my part-time job as a waiter. I was approached by a customer who had received the wrong order and they were very upset. It appeared that the specifications of how the meal was to be made were not well understood by the waiter that took the initial order. My main aim on the encounter was to ensure that the customer had a pleasant experience despite this upset and still leave with the impression that they received high quality service. I was aware this would require me to listen attentively to their concerns and show that I understood their grievances. I had a discussion which allowed me to use my communication skills to ask appropriate questions to clarify the details of what the customer wanted. I then clearly and emphatically explained to the customer that the staff understood the situation and were happy to remedy the situation by taking the cost of food off the bill. Following this, the customer was happy with the outcome and did not make a complaint. Frequently in medicine, doctors are required to work with patients who may be upset with aspects of their care or apologize for mistakes. It's important to demonstrate listening skills in order to allow patients to feel that their concerns are heard. By giving a lot more specific information there, you're making it a lot clearer that you're using the STAR framework, and it just helps the question to have a lot more flow, and you're adequately packing in the right amount of information. So by giving more information around what you did and demonstrating that you had a clear understanding in your mind of the actions that you took and how they had the effects that they did, you appear a more capable candidate. Using the STAR format allows you to talk through your tasks and ensure that you adequately explain why what you have done is relevant to a medical career.